Talking Points with Paul Hammond on UCB One.
And recent research has shone a new light onto a condition that affects an awful lot of people around the world, not just here in the UK. Because a study that's been done partly by a team from Edinburgh University, as well as people who actually live with the reality of the condition, has discovered that chronic fatigue, or ME, tends to affect women more than men. Why might that be the case? And what is ME anyway? Is it the same as chronic fatigue? And is chronic fatigue just, I'm feeling a bit tired, or is there more to it than that? As this research has come to light and as people are talking about it, we thought we would try and find out, not least because most of us at some point will come across someone who is living with the reality of this condition. Well, Sonya Chowdhury is the Chief Executive for Action for ME. She's also the chair of the management group of the Decode ME study that has been working with the University of Edinburgh on this, and she joins me on the line now. Can we start with a definition? And I know that this is not an easy thing to do, but when people talk about ME and people talk about chronic fatigue, there are an awful lot of preconceptions people carry, I think, as to what it means. So what are we actually talking about, Sonya, when we talk about this condition?
You're absolutely correct, Paul. We tend not to use chronic fatigue because chronic fatigue is a symptom that features in lots of illness, from cancer through to MS and illnesses like that. So we talk about myalgic encephalomyelitis. The NHS often diagnoses chronic fatigue syndrome, or CFS. So I will talk about ME, but others may use the term CFS. So myalgic encephalomyelitis is classified as a neurological illness. It affects anybody of any age, of any background, and it affects people in different ways, and symptoms can fluctuate and change over time, which is what makes it difficult and confusing for some. The key defining symptom of ME is something called post-exertional malaise, and that means a flare-up of symptoms after even a small amount of exertion. So for some who are severely affected, that could just be moving in bed. For somebody who's more mildly affected, getting up, going to the bathroom, maybe going out for a walk, could flare up their symptoms, and they could then have a relapse, which could last a few hours, a few days, or even months, and that can sometimes be delayed.
I think the key word there is flare, isn't it? Because, I mean, I take the dog out for a walk and we do 2.5 to 3 miles, and I come home and I sit down on the sofa and, I'm pretty malaised, if truth be told. I'm ready for a bit of a kip. But that is very different to the sort of flare that you're talking about, where similar, I suppose, in the same way when people have something like flu or something like that. Those are the sorts of conditions that can exhibit, or the sort of symptoms that can exhibit themselves. And it is the difference between, I'm feeling a bit tired, and actually I cannot move at all. I simply do not have the capacity to get on with life.
Absolutely. It's a severe, persistent exhaustion that just doesn't improve with rest, which is different from you after your dog walk. There are other symptoms. People can experience hypersensitivity to light, to sound, for some even touch, meaning that they can't be hugged. So you can imagine if you're a child and you can't bear being touched by your parents. There are some people experience pain, people experience cognitive dysfunction, sort of called brain fog, the inability to concentrate, for example. So there's unrefreshing sleep. So a wide range of symptoms that may flare up alongside the severe persistent exhaustion.
And you made the point that, when people talk about chronic fatigue, well, actually, that symptom can appear as a part of lots of other conditions, and some of the other symptoms you're describing there can appear as part of lots of other conditions as well. So when you talk about ME as a neurological condition rather than, for example, an autoimmune condition, what is the difference in that?
Well, the reality is that we don't actually have the science to give us a firm classification. The classification has been undertaken by the World Health Organization based on the evidence we've got thus far. But what we do know is that ME affects most of the body's symptoms. Many people with ME cite a virus that has triggered ME. So I had glandular fever, I never got better. I had a chest infection, a throat infection, I never got better. And sadly, what we're seeing with COVID as a viral infection, we have a lot of people that haven't recovered after, and research is showing that about 50% of those 2.1 million people have ME-like symptoms. So actually, we could be talking about 1.3 million people with ME or ME-like symptoms that are being classified as long COVID.
In this recent study that you guys were a part of, I mentioned the Edinburgh Uni, and I know Edinburgh Uni, I've been doing a lot of work on this alongside Action for ME. But we also mentioned the Decode ME team, where you are chair of the management group for it. And there is a particular emphasis and special nature to that, isn't there?
There is indeed. We are very clear that science is better when you have the involvement of people with lived experience. And that can be very challenging with an illness like ME, because 1 in 4 people are so severely affected. They're housebound, often bedbound, in darkened rooms for years, and some even need help with feeding. So involving people with lived experience of ME can be challenging, but we have worked incredibly hard to change the way that we have meetings, the way we involve people. And what we have seen, this dedicated group of people with lived experience and carers have helped us improve the science. They've helped us in every aspect of the study.
And, you know, the moment you suggest something like that, you kind of think, well, that's so obvious that would be a better pathway to say, why don't we do this with more things? Because I would imagine that the scientists come up with a theory and the people who actually live with it go, no, that's not what it's like at all. How has that enriched the science and the discoveries that are being found as a result?
There are lots of examples. The one that really stands out linked with this study is the analysis we undertook that the paper's been published about was on the questionnaire responses from the first 17,000 people into the study. Now, that questionnaire is so much better because people with lived experience said, that question doesn't make sense. You can't ask it like that. We don't understand the language. Now, if someone can't understand the questionnaire, how can we get the data we need to give good quality analysis? So there are many, many examples like that. The other one is that we're recruiting people with lived experience better because people with ME have advised us how best to do that.
Yeah. If you want to find out more about the project, then you can have a look at the website, decodeme.org.uk, decodeme.org.uk. That tells you all about the study that is happening. And, of course, we should also mention the Action for ME, which is the support charity that looks to raise a voice on behalf of those who have ME, as well as support people who are living with the reality of the condition. actionforme.org.uk, actionforme.org.uk, and Sonya is the chief executive. So I mentioned this sort of headline that's got people talking around the study over recent days, that there seems to be a greater prevalence or a greater susceptibility to developing ME for women than for men. Now, I suspect the answer to this may well be we need to do more work to find out. But is there any indication as to why that might be the case?
So we found that being female, older and ill for longer increases the chance of greater severity of ME. And I must stress, this is the first analysis. So we've had, this was on 17,000 people. We've now got, a lot more people, over double that have registered, although people can still sign up. We still need more people to take part. And we will also be looking at the DNA, and we haven't done that analysis yet. But you're correct. We don't know why more women women are affected by ME than men. We see this in other illness areas, and there are lots of indications. People talk about hormonal differences. People might say, oh, it's because women are more likely to go to the doctor, which we believe is not the case. Men do suffer with ME, but we are seeing around 3-4 times as many women, and we don't understand why, and we definitely need more research.
Yeah, and I suppose there are elements where we have to say if it is triggered by trauma, by illness, then there are lots of things in a woman's life, things around childbirth and as you say, changes in life as you get older that could actually be contributing to that as well. Is there enough willingness to be, with all the pressures that there are on the NHS and so on at the moment, is there a sufficient awareness of the impact of this condition in people's lives?
It's improving. I've been with the charity nearly 11 years and I've definitely seen an improvement. I think the awareness around long COVID has helped that. There are many, many brilliant healthcare, social care professionals out there, but sadly we still hear of those that face stigma or aren't being believed or being told they've got a mental health issue and therefore are being treated incorrectly for ME. What has been fantastic alongside the Decode ME study and the funding that we received for that is a couple of weeks ago, the cross-government national delivery plan, an interim plan for ME was launched. And so there is a lot of awareness that has risen as a result of almost the validity that's been given by the government sitting up and taking notice, research funders putting money into research. What we now have to do is to ensure that that continues and make sure that we secure money and for research, make sure that people get access to support, and we continue to work alongside doctors, social workers and others who have an incredibly tough job. We all want the best for people with ME and others that have a wider range of needs, and we must work together.
A sad reality for many people who eventually end up being diagnosed as having ME is that they get misdiagnosed along the way. And sometimes people have been diagnosed with ME when they have other conditions as well. It is so important that we increase our understanding of this condition and the impact that it has on people's lives and the way forward in supporting and helping those who are living with it. If you suffer from ME or somebody that you know does, or indeed you suspect that perhaps your symptoms would actually be something that the doctor should look at a little more closely, where you can get advice, you can get information, and you can get support from the community that has built around the charity Action for ME. actionforme.org.uk is their website, actionforme.org.uk. Take a look at that for yourself. Sonya Chowdhury is the Chief Executive, and Sonya, thank you for joining us this morning and bringing a little light onto a condition that I suspect many people misunderstand. Thank you very much.